Hi guys, my name is Paulo Ruiz. I'm a TV commercials director, and now we're here to take a look at the Sony a6400. We're gonna be taking a look at the video capabilities of the camera. One thing I noticed about this camera is that it's almost identical as the Sony a6500. I find the body to be a little bit larger and the grip to be a little bit wider. If you don't put them side by side, you'd probably confuse one with the other. Even the buttons at the back, they're almost identical, if not identical, which I like because I like how the layout of the buttons at the back. The ergonomics are on point and the buttons are where they should be. So I think Sony did a pretty good job in maintaining that kind of layout. When it comes to the battery life, I would say that there's not a lot of improvements on this because we're still using the same W batteries as the Sony a6500. But if you're already a Sony user, if you're familiar with the Sony system, you're probably used to this. So you already know that the batteries would only last you a couple of hours, if not only an hour. So if you're a wedding filmmaker, or if you're in advertising, or if you do a lot of video blogs, or you do a lot of travel videos, you probably have a lot of spare batteries with you right away. I have a lot of friends who have been using the Sony system already, and they usually have at least 5 or 10 batteries with them just so they don't run out of batteries while they're shooting. I've experienced working with different Sony cameras in some of my projects in the past. As a TV commercials director, I usually work with different cameras, depends on the requirement of the project. I usually work with the smaller cameras of the Sony system as my B camera or the second camera, because sometimes you just run and gun and you can't set up big cameras in certain situations. So the Sony system is very much capable of performing its job. I would say that the video capabilities of this camera is almost identical as the Sony a6300. It shoots at 4K at 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second, but it also keeps the 120 frames and 60 frames per second at HD. For the more advanced users, there's still the S-Log color profile in the Sony a6400. If you guys are not familiar with it, it just allows you to color grade your material and have a more dynamic control when it comes to the color. But obviously you have to go through the color grading software and manipulate it there. One of the bigger improvements of this camera is the tracking autofocus, wherein you just need to touch your subject on your screen, and even if it's moving, as long as the subject has enough highlights or enough patterns to be recognizable, it's gonna keep the subject on focus. And I believe that the eye detection and the face detection of this system has been greatly improved, so it's easier for the subject to be tracked and to keep on focus. This feature is great for people or filmmakers who are always on the go. Let's say wedding filmmakers, documentarists, action filmmakers, when you do a lot of sports, when you do a lot of travel, when you shoot your own materials. It's just easier to just touch the screen and just keep your subject on focus and let the camera system do its job. However, sometimes it slides or it drifts away from your subject, the autofocus, but it's still a good feature to have. You never know when you need this feature. So I would suggest to not rely on this feature 100% when you're doing your own material, especially if you control the setup. But again, you can shoot in high speed, say 120 frames, and you can view the footage in camera in real time in slow motion already. So you don't have to export your footage, go through your editing software, interpret the footage, render it, and then that's when you only see the slow-mo shot that you took. One of the more obvious improvement of this camera from the previous cameras is the fully articulating screen. So now you can shoot in high angle, in low angle. You can shoot from the hip if you want, or a different perspective on your angles. Because sometimes with the previous cameras, you will need a separate monitor just so you can see what you're shooting. So basically the selfie screen or the fully articulating screen gives you more freedom and more access to how you want to shoot your material. However, one big drawback of this screen when you put the screen like that is that the electronic viewfinder kind of blocks at least 1/8 of the screen. And if you're going to be mounting a shotgun microphone on the horseshoe mount, it's gonna just block the whole screen altogether. So it kind of defeats the purpose of video blogging if you're doing a selfie mode. But you can always buy a cage or an L mount so that you can put the shotgun microphone on the side so that you can see yourself clearly on the selfie screen. When Sony released this camera, it's meant to target the video blogger market, especially with the fully articulated, selfie screen wherein you can see yourself while you record your own material. However, I still don't think that this meets the needs of, a video blogger. You'd probably ask me why, because I believe that this camera has to be mounted on a tripod or on a gimbal because this camera, unlike the a6500, it doesn't have the built-in image stabilization. So if you're a video blogger and you're out there doing your own shots, mostly handheld, I'm assuming, image stabilization is an essential feature to have if you have a camera because you want all your shots stable without going through the post process all the time. And like what I said earlier, the microphone will block the selfie screen, so you will probably need to buy mounts. Also, the Sony a6400 doesn't have an earphone jack, so if you're recording a lot of audios in your video blog, you'll probably want to use an external recorder just so you can monitor your audio. Sony decided to improve the menu of this camera. We still have that lengthy and deep menu inside the camera, so if you're a new user, you'd probably still get lost in your first couple of tries. But if you're familiar with the system already, the customizability of the buttons can open up a lot of possibilities for the users. Unlike the Sony a6300 or the a6500, this camera allows you to shoot time-lapse manually. Sony a6400 has a built-in time-lapse mode which works perfectly. The only drawback is that this camera will not build the footage for you, so you will have to export everything, go through your editing software, and stitch everything up. Overheating is usually a complaint of my friends who use the system. I believe Sony was able to address this now with the Sony a6400 because I was able to shoot long footage in a long period of time without me encountering overheating. And I believe that there's no record limit, so it's perfect for interview videos wherein the subject would be in front of the camera and talk for a long period of time. Unfortunately, I think the Sony a6400 is just a Sony a6300 with a slightly bigger grip and a tilt screen. However, what I think people would greatly appreciate in this camera is one, there's no record limit, which is very important, and two, the much improved autofocus tracking system that this camera offers. So we have to admit, the Sony a6400 is not a bad camera at all. The price point is great given its capabilities. It is a great camera to have when you travel, it's light, and it's compact. So if you have a Sony a6500 or a Sony a6300, should you switch to this one? Maybe not, because you're getting the same image quality. But if you want a good, affordable second camera for your film projects, sure, give this camera a shot.